So the other thing I haven't mentioned, which is an important tip, is silence is terribly, terribly important. If we're on retreat, then we have a certain amount of environmental silence, the groups in noble silence, so that minimizes external talking. We also want to be diligent about not engaging in a lot of internal talking. So try to stay away from the internal chatter, the commentary, the narration of your life, the judging of things around you. Very, very important to include that silence. You also want to really get into the zone with natural breathing. Trying to manipulate the breath will give a temporary benefit to the practice, but not long term. You have to let the body find its own rhythm. As you get deeper into the jhana practice, around the fourth jhana, it's talked about in the traditional texts that breathing stops. Whether breathing stops or not, I can't say. What I can say is the perception is that the body is not breathing. And we need to go through that and not take big breaths in a activation of our survival mode. We need to stay with that natural breath, what feels like no breath. And that will take us deeper in the practice. When you're in the zone in this practice, when it's going well, you want to extend your sits. When you're sitting and say you have some jhana factors, piti is present, you're relaxed, you feel good, sit longer. When you're struggling, when you're in pain, when you can't stay with the breath, do not extend those sits. Only extend the ones that are working well. It's an important, important tip. If you're finding it hard to stay with the breath, then counting breaths or doing long and short can help keep us focused on the breath. The number one problem people get into is they take the counting as the object. That becomes the meditation. And so you've got to do it really softly, really gently. And you'll find some people it doesn't work for at all, some people it works beautifully for. But you've got to get skillful about when to stop. And that's when you're getting concentrated, the counting will feel cumbersome and clunky. So that's when you want to stop. And just be with the breath. Just be with the breath here. You're not following it away or into the body. You're just staying with it in the Anapana region only. The jhanas started, they actually were practiced before Buddhism, before the Buddha. So they were yogic practices that were oral practices. The Buddha did them, found the value in them, and then folded them into Buddhism along with the Vipassana practices and the other samatha practices. And so he organized the practices that we do, many of which were yogic practices of the day. It's a good question, the common question about mixing with Vipassana. You can do whatever you wish. I mean, you're at home practice, you're the captain of the ship, so you get to decide. But just knowing that the jhana practice won't deepen if we stop and do another practice. So we have to recognize if we're wanting to do a deep dive with breath awareness, that's what we need to do exclusively. But people do mix and match. They'll do, one day breath awareness, one day Vipassana, or whatever they want to do. And of course, if that's it will help concentrate, and then they can apply that concentration to Vipassana. So that does work and does help also. But how long you do it, it really depends on you. My rule of thumb is I see students whose practice is really deepening at home practice. They're sitting about 2 hours a day on average. Not less than that is what I'll say. But I'm not saying everybody has to do 2 hours a day at home. Some can, some can't. But if you want your practice to keep deepening in whatever you're doing, it's probably going to require that level of commitment. And also doing a retreat, an in-person retreat or two a year to do another level of deep dive. And then I do think doing an in-person retreat on this practice is really helpful. I'm doing one next year. Next year I'll do 1 2-week jhana retreat in April. And then in 2026, I'm going to, I think, go to two-week retreats a year of jhanas. But I'm doing small retreats. The first one I'm maxing at 10 yogis because I interview everybody every day and I want to work closely with folks to see if we can move them along. And then I'll see if I can do larger groups from there. But I want to start small and try to really hone that down. Even though I've taught a large number of jhana retreats, I've not done it with small groups before. So that's what I want to try. So, but you can find there's certainly other teachers and other groups that are practicing this. Not everybody practices the same. That's one thing you'll find. There's probably 4 or 5 major presentations of the jhanas in the West now, and they're all a little different.